This is the Andrew Luck story that has never been told. I can assure you that because I covered the previous Andrew Luck story in Indianapolis all those years and his runs with the Colts. I had a file on my computer of everything I kept track of with the shoulder injury, and it was 15,000 words. And I learned so much stuff in the reporting of this story that I had never previously known. Conversations he had with his throwing guru, with his former coaches, with his former teammates, with his current teammates with the Colts in the darkest moments of his career. And it was stuff that never has come to light yet. And in a lot of ways, it blew me away. It was stuff I'd never heard before. And again, I covered the story as closely as anyone in that moment. But looking back on it a couple years later, there were so many things we didn't know about. And those were the conversations that came through while I reported this podcast out. The one thing we never heard from Andrew Luck through this whole process was how he felt about how the Colts built around him. Publicly, he never issued a bad word about anybody. Not about the GM, not about the owner, not about the coaches, not about the OC, not about his teammates. That was not his MO, and it never will be. And a lot of his teammates respected the hell out of him for that. But David Shaw and I had a very interesting conversation. He's as close to Luck as anybody. He's the Stanford head coach. He was the OC under Jim Harbaugh when Luck signed with Stanford back in 2008. And I said, Coach Shaw, did the Colts protect Andrew Luck well enough in your estimation? And David Shaw's been a coach for 2 decades, and he said, that is the most loaded question I've ever been asked, but I'm going to answer it. And I said, go ahead. And he said, absolutely not. He said, Andrew would never say it, but I asked him one time, what is wrong? What do you need? And Andrew told him, he said, I need a running back. The play-action game does not work without a running back. And if you remember, the Colts had traded a first-round pick in 2013, the year after they drafted Luck, the year after he was sacked 41 times as a rookie, for Trent Richardson, who averaged 2.7 yards a carry at best and was out of the building in 2 years. And so without a reliable, potent run game, so much more was on his shoulders. Now, he never said it publicly, and he never will, but the fact that they never added that piece, in addition to not adding a capable offensive line, which we've all talked about for years. But that was an insight into Andrew's thinking that had never been previously disclosed, and I think is very fascinating. For me, covering it in that time, I didn't know how bad it was. I didn't know how dark it was for him. I didn't know that he was inches from not returning in 2017 or 2018. He hated football. He hated himself. He was, in his words, an angry SOB to be around, and an SOB to a lot of people around him. And it was in a dark place. And the sad thing is a guy that played with so much joy early in his career. I mean, he was throwing the ball all over the field. He was high-fiving teammates. He was thanking defenders for hitting him. I mean, he was a unique player, and he brought a lot of joy to the game, and he brought a lot of joy to the city and his teammates and the league. I mean, you hear guys talk about him in a different way. And that was stripped from him. He lost his football innocence somewhere along the way, whether it was the torn abdomen, the ruptured spleen, the torn labrum in his throwing shoulder, you name it. I mean, you name a body part, and this guy had it beat up. And he came to resent the game and what it did to him, and that's just sad. And I didn't know how dark it got for him, both mentally and physically. And there were points during the reporting where my eyes were open because I couldn't believe how hard it got for him at certain points of his rehab. It makes the 2018 season and what he did, NFL Comeback Player of the Year, even more impressive, even more ridiculous to come back from that. But the takeaway for me is just how sad it is that we didn't get to see him play for 3 or 4 or 10 more years. How is Andrew Luck going to respond to this? That's a great question. My initial reaction would be, oh, it's about me? I hate it. He'll spend no time on it. This is a guy that never read a story about him while he was an NFL player. And a lot of players say this, but most of them are BSing you. Andrew Luck was telling the truth. We've talked about this, and he did not read about himself. He didn't feel comfortable doing it. He saw no positives that would come out of it. Now, this is a different story, though, because I had some interesting conversations with his former teammates at Stanford and his former coaches at Stanford and with the Colts. And his story means a lot to a lot of people, whether he wants to admit that or not. You know, these are guys that he stays in really close touch with to this day. And they talked about the father he's become and the friend he's always been. And his career on the field meant a lot to them too. I mean, this was a guy that, I've always said this about Andrew Luck, he didn't care about the BS. A lot of quarterbacks love being a celebrity. He didn't care about that. He used a Velcro wallet with his college logo on it. He had a flip phone. He wore Joseph A. Banks boxy suits to his press conferences when he was a rookie. They didn't look good. He didn't care. He didn't shave because he was too lazy. All he cared about was football. And what his former teammate and backup Matt Hasselbeck told me years ago was a lot of guys love being in the NFL, but not a lot of guys just love playing football. Andrew Luck was the latter. He just loved playing football. And I think his story is unique and it's refreshing and it's very, very important. And I think that might resonate with him. He doesn't want to talk. Maybe he never will talk. But I do think some of the words from some of the people around him in this podcast will mean a lot to him. And I think his story is important. And I think doing it the right way and telling it the right way with the breadth and the nuance and the context that's important, I think it matters. I think it matters to NFL players and I think it matters to fans because we're all fans of the game. And I think the human aspect of it and the human side of his story is important as well.